Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and I have part 2 of the political lens here for you that I would like to share. Most of what I'm covering and talking about are sources of power in organizations, aka through the political lens. And so if you want to know how to get more power, this is what you'd like to listen to. Likewise, if you want to look at how other people get power in organizations and to see how it's used, this might also be a good presentation for you to watch. So Morgan, I think, has 16 different sources of power in organization that I want to talk about quickly today. The first is formal authority, legitimized power, and most of us are familiar with this if we work for somebody or if somebody works for us. Control of scarce resources. So people become dependent on resources in organizations, and especially slack resources. So if you have some control over them, time, money, then oftentimes it gives you more power. What happens in organizations if individuals or departments get incremental resources that comes as slack at first is then relied upon years later or months later, and we forget that it's slack. So just a heads up when that does happen. And we know from the structural lens that that without slack resources, it's very hard to be innovative in organizations. The use of organizational structure, rules, and regulations. These are the people that have taken the time to learn the rules in detail. They can use them in your favor or against your favor because they know them frontwards and backwards. These may be go-to people when you want to know exactly what you can and can't do. These also may be people who know the rules and regulations so well that they may overstate them or just make them more than what they really are to use power. The control of decision processes. So this is the ability or the power to influence the outcomes of decision making. First of all, under what premises are decisions made? So what conditions tend to frame the decision or define the constraints that go into a decision. The process, so how and by who gets to consider the alternatives. And then finally, the issues and objectives. So this is information about alternatives that are available to others in terms of what we want to share before decisions are made, or what can be shared, or what is shared in order to base decisions upon. Control of knowledge and information. Many of us know this. If somebody knows something and won't tell, they tend to have more power than others. So as you're going through here, this may be a good source or lens, if you will, to look at the different kind of power that people hold in the office. This is one of my favorite ones. It's control of boundaries. This often happens with administrative assistants in organizations. That they're usually gatekeeper roles. So people that oftentimes have a low pay grade and a lower recognized position. However, they also have a disproportionate power in comparison to their position description. They have power to the boss, and they can control who gets to see the boss, who doesn't get to see the boss. They also control what the boss thinks about. So often these people do give their opinions to that person that they're working for, and often the boss, if you will, relies on this person for another set of eyes. The ability to cope with uncertainty. Those of us that are okay with not knowing what's going to happen in the future tend to do better and have more power in organizations because we provide a better holding environment for others. An example in the office is Dwight is really not, he doesn't have a high ability to cope with uncertainty, where Jim tends to have more of ability to do that. And Jim then uses that to often get together, get allies together, and play with that information. Control of technology. We know definitely this happens in our workplaces. If you ever had your computer go down and you have to have somebody from the technology department come and fix it for you, they have lots of power. The interpersonal alliances, networks, and control of an informal organization within where we work. So again, you can see this in the office, how Jim uses his informal organization. Sometimes these are having friends in high places that, my best friend's uncle is the CEO of, this could be sponsors that we have or mentors that we got to know along the way. So you can see how we can use these coalitions of people that are not directly related to our workplace to gain power in our organization. Control of counter organizations. So some examples here are if you can control a trade union or have that ability to talk and negotiate with a trade union in your favor, that gives you a lot of power. And then, so we're going to talk a lot about this next one in the cultural lens, but the symbolism and management of meaning. So if we are a good read on what symbols mean in the workplace, that subtle understanding can also work in our favor to both persuade others and to persuade them that this is a reality when it may not be, because we have control of that meaning and the symbols that go along with it. Gender and the management of gender relations. In most, maybe not most, but in some organizations, and I'm going to say hypothetically, it makes a great deal of difference if you are a man or a woman. And oftentimes unwritten rules keep you in certain power, and a certain power influence sometimes gives you more power, sometimes gives you less power. So many organizations are dominated by gender-related values that tend to bias organizational life in favor of one sex over another. So these next two slides I want to share are female and male strategies that are used in people with authority, if you will, that have recognized leadership roles and how we may want to look at them. So you may want to think of, if you have a supervisor or boss that's a woman, some female strategies that are used include Queen Elizabeth I, rule with a firm hand. The Amazon is a leader of women, especially influential around other like-minded women. Delilah uses the powers of seduction. The First Lady tends to exercise power behind the throne. Oftentimes these are also what we may consider corporate wives, or even executive secretaries and special assistants. The Invisible Woman adopts a low profile and blends in with surroundings. People don't really know or see that she's a leader. And then the Great Mother, who uses power through caring and nurturing, and that's what people tend to rely on her for. On the other hand, and I think also to please take this in light humor as we look around, but I think it's also fun to really look at, because I know these roles fit, and you can even see where it fits Jan in the office, or even Michael in the office. Because if we jump right down to the little boy, I think Michael uses the little boy to get one's way in difficult situations, especially in relation to female coworkers or subordinates. Maybe the angry little boy, frustrated or whining, throws a temper tantrum, or who tries to cultivate sympathy. Cute little boy who tries to curry a favor, especially when he's in a jam. But from the top, the warrior adopted by busy executives in fighting corporate battles, often used to bind women into roles as committed supporters, because he protects us. The father takes women, usually under his wing, King Henry VII, absolute power, and gets what he wants. He attracts and discards female supporters according to their usefulness to him. The playboy uses sex appeal, when executives have little stable power, they often rely on sex appeal to win support. The jock is display behavior that we see. I often think of a man kind of beating on his chest to attract and convince others of his power and what he can do. The good friend often develops partnerships with female colleagues, either as confidants or as key sources of information and advice, and turns to them. And then there's the chauvinist pig, who makes women feel threatened, and characterized often by various degradation rituals in which women are paraded or made to look as if they've done something very wrong or bad, whether they've actually done it or not. So going back to Morgan's sources of power, the number 12 are structural factors that define the stage of action. So to use the structure in an organization, so people, if you think about the vertical and lateral design of organizations, and how people can use that in a position. Yet, I have to always stop and ask here, how is it that there can be so many sources of power in organizations and around us, yet so many people in organizations feel powerless? Like, what I do doesn't really matter, or who am I to make a difference? And oftentimes you'll even hear, if you're at a lower level of an organization, hear somebody at an upper level say something like this, and it's baffling. Number 13, the power one already has. Power is a route to power, so the more power you have, the easier it is to accumulate more power. The power of irreplaceability. If we have a monopoly of information or skills or expertise that we know that a consultant told us, gives us a well-defined spot in an organization and power to stay there. The power of consensus, getting those around us, building allies. The power that comes with political skill. So legitimate power is the position, where political skill is more of the referent power. So it's the personal characteristics that individuals have. How good in their role, the credibility, verbal skills, articulation, to be able to diagnose what's going on. So this is also known as individual power. But I think it's referent power according to French and Raven. Another way to look at power, and this jumps out of Morgan, is Hofstede. Gert Hofstede studied perceptions of power in other cultures. So one of his 5 areas of power in culture was power-distant cultures. So in high power-distant cultures, there's a small, powerful elite. The majority of the people are relatively powerless, and people it's hard to get into the powerful elite. This also is true for organizations, where some organizations are have low power distant cultures. So people can start at the bottom easily and move up. The United States is known as one of these countries. And again, some organizations, this happens, sometimes it doesn't. Finally, politics are in the eye of the beholder, so I'm going to let you read through this list. You can see how we can frame or say what other people do. And then I want to end with this quote by Peter Block. The power of a boss is asymmetrical. It is easier to use authority to tighten up, shrink, and make an organization more cautious than it is to use power to open up, expand, and make an organization more courageous. There's a readiness of people in low power positions to believe the worst. If it is fear we want to instill in our subordinates, they are quite ready to respond. If, on the other hand, we want them to take more responsibility, and be political in a positive